Is money something that is a trigger word for you, or you find that on your path of building your business or building your life, you keep coming up with money blocks, or you feel like you never have enough, or even you attract money, but you can't quite keep it? If you've answered yes to any of those questions, this episode is for you. And I'm so excited to be welcoming my friend Emily Williams to the show. She is a money mindset coach, and she has helped thousands of ambitious, heart-centered women all over the world busting through obstacles when it comes to going after their dreams and really creating the life that they truly desire. She's the host of I Heart My Life show podcast and also author of the book I Heart My Life: Discover Your Purpose, Transform Your Mindset, and Create a Successful Business Beyond Your Dreams. I'm really excited to be diving into this week's conversation on the show, all about money mindset, because this is something that comes up so much in the space of coaching and is one of the trigger words, and also areas that a lot of people are uncomfortable to really dive into. So we're going to be diving into that with Emily Williams. Emily, thank you so much for being here. We're so excited to dive in to your story and start to uncover some of the main reasons why many of us may be feeling blocked when it comes to money and how to break free from that. Okay, so Emily, I'm so excited to have you here. We just did the intro, so people are like, oh my gosh, I want to learn more. I want to know how to get these money blocks and these things out of the way. But before we get into how we can start to identify how we have money blocks, what's in the way, and some of the steps, I'd love to hear. I know you have a juicy story of what got you into this place of really wanting to focus on helping women and people really master their money blocks, and get that out of the way so that they can attract more wealth and more fulfillment in their life. So what is the story that was like your pivotal moment? Because, I'm the story girl, so I want to hear all of it. And I know our listeners do.
Totally. Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. And I love sharing this story because not only does it inspire other people, but it also reminds me how far I've come. Because, being an ambitious person, sometimes you don't feel like that. You don't feel like you've come really far, but I definitely know I have. So I was actually a psychology major, and the whole plan that I laid out in front of myself and, that I had thought about for years was to go to grad school. And I looked at 12 different schools around the US. I made my dad fly to all of them with me so I could vet them and just feel into what would be the right next step for me. And ultimately decided on Northwestern in Chicago, which was about a 6-hour drive from where I was from in Columbus, Ohio. And so as the summer before grad school approached, my mom and I decided to drive to Chicago to find an apartment in the city. And so we were literally on the road, and I got this feeling in the pit of my stomach that this was not the right next step for me. And so I started to cry. And my mom, I had sunglasses on, so I was trying to hide the tears, but my mom could tell that something was up. And so she just asked me what was wrong. And in that moment, I just said, I don't feel like this is the right next step for me. And given that it was going to cost me well over 6 figures, it was going to require 3 years of my life, my mom and I decided, okay, well, you should probably be pretty sure of this next step before we move forward. So we literally turned the car around and went back to Ohio. And I basically entered into a major full-blown quarter life crisis where I had to move back in with my parents. I ended up working at Starbucks for a bit. I just had to figure out a way to get clear on my next steps. But it took a lot longer than I ever expected. And during that period of time, I just couldn't put my finger on what I was meant to do career wise. But during that time, I also had something else happen where I actually went to England to visit a friend on my way to visit my sister who was studying abroad in Italy. And I had this moment similar to turning the car around where my emotions kind of kicked in and gave me clarity that I was craving. So I literally stepped out of Victoria Station in London and was like, oh my gosh, I'm meant to live here. And again, no reason for it. It was literally just a feeling. No one in my family had ever moved abroad. It wasn't something that was in the cards, or so I thought. But once I had that experience coming back to Ohio, it was like, okay, I'm not meant to live here. I'm meant to go to England. So how do I make that happen? So that for me was a really big moment of clarity. I still didn't have like the clarity around my career, but I knew I was meant to live in the UK. And so I did everything I possibly could to get there and realized you could either get there through a spouse visa. And at the time, I didn't have a British husband. I do now. Or you could get there via a student visa. So I decided, okay, I've always wanted to write a book. Let me apply for a master's in nonfiction writing because I couldn't
Cool.
apply for a psychology degree because I didn't meet the undergrad requirements because their country was different than the US. So I applied for that and ended up getting into a program. Moved in 2010 to start this master's in nonfiction writing, started to write a book, and my life started to unfold little by little, and I started to get clearer and clearer. And ultimately, what happened was through my own journey with clarity and trying to be happy and figure out what that looked like and feeling like I was meant for something big, but not knowing what that was, that ultimately led me to discover the world of coaching. And so about 4 years later, that's when I decided to start my own business called I Heart My Life to basically help women fall in love with themselves and their lives because I feel like I wasn't taught how to do that. I was definitely taught that I could do anything I wanted, but I didn't know how to love myself. I didn't know how to get clear. I didn't know how to trust my intuition. I didn't know about mindset work. I didn't know about limiting beliefs. I didn't know about the law of attraction. And so all this stuff I started to uncover for myself during my quarter life crisis. And then I just felt called to teach other women how to do what I had done and finally get the clarity that they were craving and go for their dreams.
I love it. So what I love about this story, I mean, there's so much to it. You had this emotional response that was like, this is wrong. And you made a decision to be brave and use your voice and tell your parents, like, hey, listen, this isn't the right path. And I think that, you've heard my story before. I mean, lots of different stories. But I think there's a moment in all of our lives where we have the opportunity to squash our intuition down and say, you know, I don't know if that's right, or my external world is telling me otherwise. I should just squash this down and continue on. That's what I did in my life to a certain point, and I got really sick, and then I had to, figure it out and get onto a different path. But, what was it about your emotional states, and how does your intuition speak to you? Because I love talking about intuition. I feel like the more we can learn to listen and trust ourselves, the more fun and the more expanded our life is going to be. So let's get a little bit gritty with that. Like, how do you feel it? How do you process it? How do you know if something's right for you or wrong for you? Because everyone kind of experiences it a little bit differently.
Totally. And a lot of people have asked me that. I was 22 at the time. And so I hadn't had a lot of practice with following my gut instincts to the degree that I do now. And so that was one of the biggest moments, especially turning the car around, was one of the biggest moments for me to just tune into my intuition and start to trust myself. And the easiest way that I can describe it is that the emotion is so overwhelming that I can't ignore it. And so I
Mm,
really don't even feel like there's a choice, like I have a choice in the matter because my soul, my body, whatever you want to call it, wouldn't even let me go forward with the other thing. And, for a lot of people that manifests as sickness, maybe it manifests as, something crazy in your life happening that takes you down a different path. But for me, like I physically get just so much emotion and I get flooded with like the fear of moving forward the thing that's not aligned that I can't even physically do it. And I found that this is like a really interesting personality trait, especially in business, which I'm sure we'll get to in a bit, because part of me wishes I could just do the thing, right? Like there's so many people who can just do the thing and like get on with it, but that's not how
mm.
I'm wired. And so I just have learned to trust that. And I truly have a belief system that I will be my most successful, my happiest. I will have the most impact. Everyone literally will benefit if I'm in alignment. And so there's really no point, no benefit for me staying stuck or staying or going down a path that's not aligned for me.
So I love this. We're speaking the same language here. It's so good. So what I love about what you just said is you said your body wouldn't let you move forward. And it's interesting because I actually just had a flashback. This is a couple of years ago in my apartment in Vancouver. There was like an invitation to go and do something. I don't remember what it was. It's actually happened twice in my life now, where I tried to leave my home, but my body wouldn't let me go. And I was like, okay, D, just psych yourself up. Like, jump on the mini trampoline, go and do this thing, go take a cold shower, go do something to shift your energy because your energy sucks right now. Right. And then basically, in those moments, like, I'm trying to think of how my body has spoken in that way to me only a couple times. I've been in a dialogue with myself of, oh, you need to change your state. You need to get it together. You told these people you're going to be at this thing. And then in hindsight, I realized I was like, well, maybe there's someone I wasn't supposed to bump into, or maybe something bad would have happened on my way to this event or whatever it is. And I think the thing with intuition, and I'd love to hear more about your thoughts on this, is we don't always need to understand it, but I think it's important to trust it. And I've had many moments in my life where it's like, oh, this doesn't make sense. I want to push it aside. I want to bulldoze through it. But at the end of the day, usually we find out why. So how did you, like, going back to, you listen to your intuition, then you're back and you're working at Starbucks, you're living in your parents' home. Did you have moments I'd love to hear about, because I'm sure our listeners are at different stages of their life, different stages of, I think there's seasons every year. Like, sometimes I'm really excited about what I'm doing, I'm going full blast. And then there's other seasons where I'm like, oh, I'm feeling a little bit stuck or blocked or whatever. How did you feel while you were working at Starbucks, not pursuing the thing that you thought that you should be doing? And what were some of the inner dialogues that came up potentially when you were on that path versus doing the thing that you thought you should do before you figured it out?
Totally. Yeah. Great question. And I love this because I know that there's so much I shared in my story, and sometimes it's a bit of a highlight reel. And so
Yeah.
the truth is, when I was living at home, it was awful. And I remember one morning in particular, I opened up the store at Starbucks and I was in charge of the drive-through. And I remember my dad coming through the drive-through, and he wasn't a coffee drinker, so I knew that he was there to see me. And as I was making whatever it was that he ordered, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm such a failure. He
Mm,
just spent six figures on sending me to undergrad, has always told me I could do whatever I want. I would be successful. He's a successful business owner. And um, I was a failure. And so I had that narrative kind of playing through my mind. And when you don't have something to replace the thing that you let go, it's very challenging because you don't know why you made that decision. And so
mhm,
that's where I was at. And I ended up like reapplying to grad schools at one point. I ended up trying pre-med for a bit. I ended up walking out of that chemistry final because it was awful. And I knew that that wasn't the right step for me. And ultimately, when I started to realize, okay, I'm meant to move to London, which again made absolutely no sense, I was like, okay, so at least I have one little bit of clarity. And so I
mm,
think you have to like follow the breadcrumbs. And sometimes like they're minuscule and it's just little things and it doesn't even feel like it makes sense, or it's not even in alignment with what you're searching for, but there's something that lights you up. And so
mhm,
during that time, I started to be able to identify, okay, what are the feelings of emotion that are expansive, that are leading me towards something that feels really good versus what doesn't feel really good and almost feels like I'm going to be stuck, or I'm going to be making a decision that just feels off or isn't the right path for me. And so I started, like I said, to follow that one breadcrumb of moving to England. And as you make decisions like that and you see the results of them, mine being I met my husband online a year later, then you start to trust yourself more and develop that muscle. And you also start to, over time, understand when your off day is just, I need to rest versus I
mhm,
need to throw the baby out with the bathwater, for lack of a better phrase, and pivot the whole thing or shut something down. You start to be able to tune into like what's actually going on. And, to your point about maybe you weren't supposed to run into the person and you weren't supposed to be at that party, I also think that we often make things out to be bigger than they need to be. Like if you don't want to go to the party, just don't go to the party, right? Your
mhm,
success, your life is not dependent on you taking that one action step. And
mhm,
so I've learned to like, there's different degrees of decision making and there's different ways that I tune in now. Whereas, I didn't have that skill set back then. So I'm grateful that I accessed whatever it was to be able to make that decision because now I have a lot more knowledge and trust in myself.
And what I really like about this too is the journey between you being, I'm no longer going to grad school, to moving to London and, starting your coaching business and getting on path on purpose. There was a lot of in between. And I think that, I'm an impatient person. I don't know too much about your personality in that way, but I'm like an Aries and I like to get things done and I like to know where I'm going. And I don't really enjoy in between spaces very often, but they come, right? They're going to come no matter what we're going through because the ebb and flow of life. But what I really like about your story is the moments in between matter, and it's sometimes that small nudge to sign up for a program or to hire that mentor or to go to an event or something that it's like, oh, this is where I need to go. And through that action, through that step, more breadcrumbs, more information will come online. And sometimes we want this big bright sign of, give universe, God, give me this huge sign. And I know for me, anytime I've had those huge signs, it's usually not good. So I'm like, okay, let it be easy, let it flow. Is there any practice that you have or that you recommend for people who may be feeling stuck or in a season of not feeling clear outside of listening to the breadcrumbs? Like anything else that you do or that you recommend to people who are in those in between seasons?
Totally. And I think it's so powerful that you're bringing this up because like you said, it's not a straight line to going from this place of being uncertain, lack of clarity to finally getting that clarity. I mean, there's so many things I left out. Like I actually moved to London earlier than 2010 just for 3 months, had this random internship, fell in love with this guy, ran out of money, had to go back home, had to find another way to get back there. Like so much. I ended up, when I first moved to London, I also took courses in fashion because I thought, well, maybe I want to get into fashion. And so my point in saying that is that the main tip I have for people is to take massive action and to
Mhm.
test things out because, I later discovered Marie Forleo in the whole personal development space. And one of the things that she says is clarity comes from engagement, not from thinking about it. And so I learned really quickly that if I was just going to sit around and try and like think my way to getting clear or making the life that I want happen, it was going to be the slow path. You have to actually take the action so that you can tune into the emotion and be like, oh, this feels really good. Or no, like chemistry is terrible. And if I have to spend another year doing this, like that's going to be the worst thing ever. Right. Or no, this feels really good or whatever it is. And so you can start to get that clarity. And so just take action. I don't care how big or small the step is, but just get out of your own way and start moving towards things that feel expansive for you. It might be that you see a Facebook ad, that's sharing information about a certain webinar or course, or something on Instagram piques your curiosity, or you've always had the desire to go to Italy. Like find a way to make that thing happen and follow that pool.
Yeah, and it's about taking massive inspired action. And Marie Forleo is someone that popped up on my journey as well. And she has another quote that says, "Everything is figure outable." And that's a quote that I love too, because it's like so often in life and entrepreneurship, and when we're pivoting or stepping into a new identity or leaving our comfort zone and we're in that void of in between, it's like, oh well, I don't know how. And it's just about jumping in and figuring it out. And that's exactly what you did. And
And this
there
was
was
before Chat GPT. Like there's no excuse. Like there's literally no excuse. People tell me I don't know how, and I'm like, no, that's
yeah,
a block.
I love it. You're like, that is a block. That is not
Yeah.
true. ChatGPT is your
Yeah.
assistant and friend on all things. And I love that. So for you, you listened to the signs and you took massive inspired action and you tried a lot of things out. And I think it's also important to, like, a big thing that happened for me a few years ago. This tends to happen every few years for me, like every year or two. Yeah, I'm gonna say every year or two. I was gonna say a few years, but it's actually probably a little bit more frequent than I'd like to say. But I have these moments almost every single year around my birthday and other times where I'm like, do I really want to do what I'm doing now? Is this really it? And I like to go really deep into it. And usually in those moments of reflection, there's usually something that I have to let go of, something that's no longer aligned. And sometimes that comes with a level of grief too, of like, oh, I used to be the person that was all about this thing and that was super lit up about this project or this program or this way of being or this way I was, but I'm no longer fully in alignment with that anymore. And one of the biggest parts that has really helped me grow on my transition points of my evolution is being okay with accepting my evolution and accepting my preferences and self. Cause you even said, you're like, hey, if you don't want to go to the party, don't go to the party. It sounds so simple. It sounds so simple. But if you're normally the life of the party used to be super external and all of these other pieces, and you're just no longer that way anymore. I know I went through this years ago. I was like, oh, like I should be this way, but I'm no longer. And it's about outgrowing and shifting and allowing ourselves to be that. So grief and identity shifts have been really big in my growth. How does that resonate with you? And I'd love to hear a little bit about maybe how that shows up for you in your seasons of growth as an entrepreneur and as a woman, as a mother, and all the other things. And yeah, and if you have any processes around that, because that's a huge part of our evolution.
Yeah, so good. I'm laughing to myself because I remember a time when I was building my business, I was working like 80 to 100 hours a week. And we were living in London, and my husband's very social and I'm not. And he was like, I don't understand why you don't want to go. And I was like, well, number one, like this party sucks. And number two, if I keep working on my business, I'm going to be able to throw a way better party for you and all your friends. So that's what I'm going to do. And
I love
at
that.
first he was like, what are my friends going to think? Like she's not there. Like they're going to think she doesn't like them. And all this stuff came up for him that we had to navigate. And so I totally understand, whether it's your own stuff or your partners or your friend or your parents not understanding like the new you or the transitions. I totally get that there's a lot of stuff that comes up for sure. And so for me, if I've had periods of grief and letting go of things and recognizing, oh, I'm no longer aligned. And for years, I kind of, because my business took off so quickly, all these people started to come to me for business coaching unexpectedly, because that was never the reason why I started the company. And so there was a period where I was like, oh my gosh, this is not what I want to be doing. And this is not what my brand, I Hurt My Life, is all about. And so I had to let go of a ton of stuff. And ultimately, like, hindsight, let go of it way too quickly because I didn't have the other thing to replace it yet. And so there have definitely been moments of learning, like how to navigate those pivots and those ups and downs and those challenges. And yeah, just figure out what's going to work for me. And I think ultimately it comes down to me having that trust within myself that I know I'm meant for something big and I know that I have this path and there's not just one way to get there. Like I get to decide how I do it. And for me, I'd much rather choose a path that feels good, that feels exciting, that feels aligned versus just doing what everyone else is doing or what I've always done in the past. Like I love a good pivot. I love when people tell me they're going to quit something because it lets me know that something else is about to come in and replace it. And that's super exciting to me.
Thank you for sharing that. I'd love to hear a little bit more. So right now you're really focusing on helping people with their money mindset and moving through. I mean, we could go so deep into intuition,
Yeah.
relationships. Oh my gosh. But I'm just like, okay, I should hone it in. I should hone it in here, guys. Um, but
Gonna do a
I
part
love,
two.
we'll do a part two.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I love it. So a big part of your focus right now is on money mindset and helping women overcome money blocks and limiting beliefs. And so for me, I remember 7 years ago when I first started my coaching business, I owned a yoga company before. I was burnt out. I was stressed out. I had all the external validation, all the external wins, but I was at a certain level in my business that I couldn't break free from. I was doing well, but not great. And I remember as I launched my coaching business and stepped out of that business, I started to have these realizations that felt like they came out of nowhere. Okay. And one of them that blew my mind was, I can't make X amount of money because I'm a woman. And I remember sitting there as this limiting belief came up or this subconscious belief. And I was like, what? Is this a real thing? And then I started to like unpack more and more and more. And it got me on the path of really doing some great work. And that is the reason why my business grew quickly within my first year. But man, I didn't even know I had limiting beliefs around money until I started unpacking it. So how do we know? How do we know that maybe we have limiting beliefs when it comes to money? And how can we start to uncover what some of those are?
Yeah, and thank you for sharing that. I feel like a lot of people can relate to that for sure, where they started down a path of whether it's growing a business or something personal development wise, and then all this stuff comes up that you didn't even know was there. And it was the same for me. I was just starting my business and trying to get these clients in the door, and literally had this 6 week period of 54 no's in a row. So 54 people saying no to working with
Wow.
me. And so luckily at the time I had this amazing coach who I thought I'd hired for business strategy, but really she was a mindset expert, which was great for me. And she taught me all about money and money blocks. And the easiest way to know if you have any money blocks is to look at your bank account and to also look at your relationship with money. So number one, do you not have the wealth that you desire? And number two, how do you feel when you think about money? And for a lot of people, money brings up a lot of anxiety, or maybe they don't even want to talk about it because they've been taught that it's wrong to talk about money. It's not proper. Maybe they don't want to be seen as wanting more money because they don't want to be greedy. And so there's like some sort of negative energy around you and money. And the way I like to think about this is a relationship, because if you think about any other relationship in your life with your spouse, with your husband, wife, with your friend, you know that there's like a certain energy there. And from day to day, it might change. Like if you're in an argument with you have an argument with somebody, or there's some like weirdness with somebody, like you can feel that. And so,
Mhm.
what is your overall feeling when it comes to money and wealth and abundance? For a lot of women in particular, it's this feeling of, I don't know anything, or I'm not good with money, or I don't know how to manage money. I don't know how to invest. And all of that can block us, because if you think about it, if you don't know how to manage money, or that's your core belief, why would the universe send you more, right? You're not prepared for it. It's like an energetic mismatch. And so I became really passionate about this topic when in my own life, like I said, I had that period of 54 no's in a row. And I realized like the core reason for that was because I wasn't willing to talk to people about money. And I had a lot of money shame.
Mhm.
And, to your point, like with pivots and all the things more recently, I believe we're always uncovering new levels of blocks and limiting beliefs. And, for you, like if you were, or people listening who've been through a period of burnout or stress, oftentimes even successful people have blocks because they don't want to be more stressed. They don't want to be more burnout. And they equate making a lot of money with stress and burnout and never seeing their family. And so, although our money blocks are often set when we're children, we can adopt new money blocks and new limiting beliefs along the path as well, based on our experience with wealth and abundance or lack thereof.
So powerful. And I love how you're like, look at your bank account. Like if you're not sure if you have them, look at your bank account. And it's so interesting because someone that I was close to when I started my business started to take off was like, oh, the only reason you're successful is because you're pretty. And like all this stuff was like coming at me in my first year of business. And I remember telling this person, it was a man. Of course.
Wow.
I mean, nothing against men, they're lovely, but it was interesting. I was like, "No, it's because I showed up, I took risks that you're not willing to take, and because I'm great at what I do." And now when I look back at that version of myself 7 years ago who left a business that I had for 8 years that I love to a certain extent, but I was burnt out at, et cetera. And I stepped into coaching. I can see such a huge difference in my self-worth and the money work that I did. I started just owning my energy and my confidence more. And it was really a game changer for me. And it's crazy because as you're talking about the 54 no's, I mean, that's interesting because I really hear two things. Okay, you had 54 no's, and you probably went to your business coach and was like, hey, give me the strategy. I need to get more yeses. But the fact that you had 54 no's, whereas most people wouldn't even persevere that long. So that shows a lot about like your grit. But I'm curious, like, what are some of the things that you did specifically to overcome some of these blocks, or what are some practical tools that, the listeners right now who might be listening, who might be like, oh my gosh, Emily is talking to me right now. I have some money blocks. What are some questions that people can start to ask themselves to start to uncover what some of their limiting beliefs are, what some of their blocks are? Because you mentioned shame, and that relationship piece I think is really powerful, and the energy piece with the friends, because it's like when we think of certain people, we feel different. We're like, oh, that person makes me excited. That person helps me feel calm. Like we have all these associations, and money is no different. So anything practical would be amazing.
Yeah. So it's really being the observer of your thoughts and the way that you interact with money. So right now, we hear a lot of chatter around tariffs and eggs are too expensive. Like, so what is your everyday thought process, or even what are you saying out loud when it comes to money? Right. So what is that belief system that's currently running the show? Is it life's too expensive? There's never enough. So like literally observe your thoughts. And this is weird for a lot of people because they think that they are their thoughts, but you actually aren't, because you can observe yourself and think, okay, like what's coming through my mind right now? If you experience an emotion, for example, if you open up your browser and look at your bank account, what is the emotion that you're experiencing? If it's anxiety, then ask yourself, okay, what am I thinking right now about my bank account? Maybe it's there's never enough. I don't understand how to manage my money. I could never make enough to cover my bills, or I only have just enough, whatever the thought process is, because we want to get clear on like what are the things that are running through your mind on a regular basis? What are your belief systems around money? And then also look at the people in your life and what are your conversations about money? What are they saying to you? And also, how are you responding? This could be your spouse, it could be a family member. Some people have a very abundant mindset when they're in groups like the one that we're in, or they're talking to their peers. But then when they talk to their parents or even strangers, they don't want to seem too abundant. They don't want to seem like they're too flashy. Like even today, so I got my hair done, and
And your
the
hair
woman
looks
doing
real good.
thank you. The woman doing my hair, we were talking about the fact that we're going to England this September. And she said, oh, like your daughter's two. Will you have her on your lap? And I said, no. When they're over two, they have to have their own seat. And last time we went to England, I chose to upgrade us and we sat in business class. And so my daughter, who was one, had her own flatbed seat. And I heard myself shrinking around that story because I didn't want her to judge me for buying a business class seat ticket for my 1 year old. Right. And like, this is me where I've been doing this work for 11 years. Right. And there's still stuff that comes up. And like I said, I'm the observer and I can coach myself now and be like, okay, well, what was that about? What's coming up for me? And we can talk about shifting it in a second, but be the observer, like how your thoughts are when you're in your own space, when you're thinking, looking at money, and then also when you're interacting with people. And we all know that people impact us in a great way. And so maybe you're also recognizing through this conversation that there's a lot of people in your life with lack mindset, and that's obviously going to be impacting you as well.
So powerful. And I think that's amazing that you could bring your daughter into first class and for her to have a lie down. Like, what an empowering thing to share. And yeah, it's definitely one of those things. What I found is the more successful I've become, the more I enjoy being around people who are just as successful or even more successful, because it's actually inspiring and it's an expander of what is possible versus, oh, I have to be aware of if I'm going to potentially offend this person based on XYZ. So that's a really good place to look at too. I love that. And so what is like a practical tool or step that someone can take after they've had that observation of like, okay, this is coming up for me. This is my relationship to it. Is it like what is a process that they can do?
Yeah. And I'll put one sort of caveat in here. There's one step that I'm going to share with you that I like to do, but for other people, it's not necessary, but I'm going to share it anyway. So that one
Love it.
would be to look beneath the surface and ask yourself, okay, where does that come from? Because for me, it's very helpful for me to see that a lot of my limiting beliefs weren't even mine to begin with. They were passed down to me. So for example, my husband, his grandma grew up in the UK in England, and she was a child during the war. And And one of the things that she remembers is not having enough money for food. And so, she's deceased now, but when I met her, she was very frugal. We got married at the Ritz in London, and she didn't even want to call down to room service to get a cup of tea. So she brought her own tea bags so she wouldn't have and we were going to pay for her, but she didn't want to inconvenience anyone, and she didn't want to spend hotel money prices
Mm-hmm.
that hotels would charge. And so
Mm-hmm.
that was the belief system that was passed down to James's dad and then down to James. And so when he looks at his money mindset, or when our listeners look at their money mindset, ask yourself, like, is this my parents' money mindset? Is it my grandparents? Like, where does this come from? Is it society? Is it my culture? Because you get to decide that you're going to think differently to those people who raised you. Now, I know that that opens up a lot of that opens up a can of worms for a lot of people, because
Mm-hmm.
that brings up, well, we don't have time for that, but anyway, it can bring up a lot if you think about differentiating yourself from your parents, especially when it comes to money. Even if you just think about, if you were to make 10 times what your parents make, like, how does that excite you? Does it bring up anxiety? Do you worry about what they will think? Like, what comes up in your body? There's a lot that's tied to previous generations that we get to unhook from, basically. And
Mm-hmm.
so it helps me to take that step and to be like, okay, this is where this came from. And let's go on to the next step and actually choose the belief system that I want to have for myself, that I know is going to help me get the results that I want in my life. And so for everyone, listening or watching, this might look a little bit different to you versus myself or Deidre. So for me, I honestly just love to write out what my limiting beliefs are. So for example, I feel ashamed for booking the business class seat for my 1-year-old. Okay. So that's the limiting belief, shame and worrying about what people are going to think. So let's flip it to the opposite. I'm proud of myself. I'm excited about the fact that I got to do this. Like, who gets to book a business class seat for their 1-year-old? I'm so happy that Charlotte got to experience this, like, whatever the opposite is, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I literally will rewrite that and make that my new mantra, make that my new screensaver, record myself saying that out loud so I can listen to it on a regular basis. Because
Mm-hmm.
you are the person who's going to help you transform. Like, you can listen to this, you can take my course, whatever, but you have to do the work and
Mm-hmm.
start to shift your own thinking. And so for me, that was Post-it notes, like I said, screensavers, recording myself saying all of these things, reading books on wealth and abundance, starting to be around people who had expansive thinking, who, to use that example, they always booked their kids in business class or first class seats. Like, it wasn't even a question. And just making that my new normal
Mm-hmm.
versus what the previous chapters had showed me was normal.
I love this so much. And some of those pieces that you mentioned, I did as well. I like mantras, put in my phone. It was like a little notification that would come up all the time. And one of mine was, I am a powerful woman with massive work to do in the world, and I am highly compensated. And I would tell myself that
Love
every
it.
single day. And it worked. This stuff works, guys. And this is the thing, I feel like some of the most powerful transformational pieces is they're actually the most simple, and it's about getting into the right rooms, the right environments, the right programs, the right mentorships, where this is the work that we're doing. And it's not like, oh, I'll do that journaling exercise tomorrow night, and then it doesn't happen. So I love accountability. I love a good course. And I know you have an incredible, I think it's an 8-week course where you help people move through limiting beliefs and really activate their wealth consciousness, their wealth codes. So tell us a little bit about what you talk about in this program and like who it's for, because I think that especially spiritually led entrepreneurs, and those are a lot of people that I tend to attract, have so many blocks around money. Oh my gosh. Like the conversations I've had with people around, oh, I actually don't want to make 6 figures. I'm good feeling like I'm broke. Oh, I actually don't need to make that much money from stage. Like, there's almost like a shame game when it's like, hey, I can help you make, an extra 100K or multiple 100K from like an hour of speaking or whatever. I can teach you the start. Oh, I'm overly spiritual for that. Like, there's a spiritual bypassing that happens with money, and it's ridiculous. And I get it to a certain degree, because there was a time in my life where I would kind of like low key internally judge people who had like really extravagant cars. And now I'm like, cool. I mean, if I was making like wild, crazy, outrageous money, I might want a wild car like that. Like now it's different. Now it's like, oh, that's motivating. That's exciting. That's, expansive. So, yeah, tell us about all the things that help us move into this wealth consciousness and how people can, take that course or learn more from you. Because I know you're doing some really exciting stuff in this space and it's so needed right now.
Yeah, and exactly what you said. It's so, so powerful because so many people, I work with a lot of service-based business owners as well. There's this shame around wanting to charge for helping people or wanting to
Mhm.
charge for inspiring or, leading from a spiritual perspective, using your spiritual gifts. And it's just so amazing to me that people are stuck in that place and not recognizing the transformation that can come from them being wealthy. And so honestly, just one more tip, if anyone is in that space, I want you to literally write out how much your dream life will cost you, right? How much money you would need to live your dream life. And then we take it one step further because you also have a service-based heart based on, everything we're talking about here. If this is resonating for you, what could you do with an additional $1 million, $200,000, whatever it is to support the world, to help the world? I remember one of my clients was very religious and she said, I don't have a need for more money. And I said, okay, well, let's just brainstorm for a second. You have an extra 500K. What can you do to support your church or to support that charity or organization that's so close to your heart? Right? Because we have such like tunnel vision and this fear around not wanting to be greedy that we're not even in tune with our desires and what it is that we actually want and the impact that we're here to have. And one of my core messages and beliefs is that really the life that you desire is exactly what's meant for you. Okay. But there's a lot of fear and stuff that's covering up those desires. We can't even get to them. And so for me, the first step for people is really uncovering what it is that you actually want. And then acknowledging that it's possible for you, it's meant for you. And, to your point around judgment, I remember there was this article about Kelly Clarkson and her divorce at the time, and it broke down the amount of money that her ex-husband wanted for child support and whatever he wanted it for. And it was something like $400,000 a month. And my first thought was, what could this guy want $400,000 a month for? Okay. And so I went into judgment. And then I was like, okay, I was at a spa and I was like, okay, this is the perfect time for me to do my journaling because whatever we judge, we block. If we're judging somebody for 400K a month, we're going to block it for ourselves. So I wrote out how I would spend $400,000 a month. And it was amazing. I was like, oh my gosh, this would be an incredible life. I get it. Now, I don't know anything about this guy. So whatever, maybe he wasn't doing this from a moral perspective, but regardless, I found a purpose for 400K. That was a little bit of a tangent, but I just wanted to speak to what you said. And that's why this work matters so much to me because so many people are hiding their gifts. They're not showing up in a big way. So many women aren't making the amount of money that they deserve and desire to make, which will further impact the world. And we're all playing small. And so my work is really around helping you uncover what it is that you actually want in your life, like truly want in your life, not what your mom wants, not what your sister wants, what you really want. And then rewiring your mind so that you are able to have it. And it really, like, if there's a mismatch between your mindset and what you're saying you want, you're going to block it every time because it's not energetically aligned. It's like that relationship piece. I often talk about, when I first moved to London, I was like a serial online dater. And so I would go on all these blind dates. And if I showed up, negative, down in the dumps, anxious, then, there probably wasn't going to be a second date. And it's the same thing with money, right? Like, so we want to create a new relationship with you and money. And that starts with your belief system and your mindset and your programming, just like a computer operating system. So we look at what's going on beneath the surface. What are your money blocks? What are your limiting beliefs? And then we help you start to transform them and reprogram essentially so that you can create the wealth that you're craving. And, the next piece of the puzzle puzzle is action. And you and I talked a lot about action steps and using that as a way to get clear. But if in your mind you don't believe that something's possible for you, or you're not capable of it, or it's not a worthy thing, then you're never going to take the action. And so my framework is really around desires, then belief, then action. And you need all three to continuously be showing up and attracting what you are meant to attract, and, living out your purpose. So, long-winded way of saying, I have this amazing course called I Heart Money that helps you with everything I just described. It's 8 modules. There's also recorded coaching calls in there, video trainings, lots of different bonuses to support you. And we're gifting your audience 15% off for anyone who uses the promo code Deidre15. And I'm sure you'll link that below.
Yeah.
So that's one opportunity. And then for the first time, we're also releasing an I Heart Money certification. So we're certifying people in becoming money mindset coaches and taking our practice and methodology, utilizing it with your students, utilizing it with your sales teams, whoever. But it's a really amazing way for you to become a practitioner of money mindset work and use this to support your business, not just from a personal development perspective, but literally taking the course. You can use it with your one-to-one clients in your group program. You can run it as a workshop, a virtual event, or again, you can use it with your team to support them in stepping into a more abundant mindset. And so we're rolling that out. It starts July 30th. It's our first cohort. We're really excited about it. I don't know anyone doing money mindset work in this way and offering a certification. So it's really one of a kind and something that I know is going to be a big impact maker in the world.
I love that you're doing a certification program, because I feel like sales and business and so many things are connected to our money mindset, and money is just an amplifier. It just amplifies who you are in the world and the good work that you're here to do. And thank you so much for offering that amazing gift to our listeners. I know that so many are going to be like, I need this. I need to work on these things. And you just gave so much value. So thank you for sharing that. And before we wrap up today's conversation, because I've heard this story before and I think our listeners need to hear it, I know you had a rock bottom moment when it came to money, and I'd love for you to share it with our listeners, because I think it's really powerful and it will just shed a light on where you were at one point to where you are now, and the deeper why of why you do this work with money.
Totally. Yeah. And, the part of my story that I didn't share at the very beginning was that when I started my business, I was $30,000 in credit card debt and $90,000 in student loan debt. So I actually had to borrow money from my husband to kick off in the program that, helped me build my business. And he was only making about 35 grand a year at that time. And he lent me $7,500 and we put it on his credit card. And so credit cards for me, I've never had shame around that. I know a lot of people do have shame around it, but I was like, this is an investor in my business and this is amazing. I'm so grateful for this. Obviously at some point I did pay off that debt. But there was a period of time where I realized that I wasn't aligned with my business. And I kind of mentioned that earlier, where I realized I'd been working with coaches from a business angle for so many years. And that wasn't actually why I started my business. I really love, as you can hear, the mindset pieces and what's going on beneath the surface. And frankly, everyone who came into my business strategy programs thought they were there for strategy and ended up needing mindset. So it was very obvious to me, like, what my mastery was and what I really loved. So anyway, during, I think it was, 2019, this was really bubbling up for me. And I realized I was going to have to pivot. Now, one of the things that I didn't realize was how long it was going to take to make some of those shifts and really replace income and, get back to a place of feeling abundant. And so everything started to happen really quickly. I ended up having an experience a few years later where I had this mastermind basically implode. There was this client that did some not so nice things, and it resulted in us losing about $250,000. And it was during that same time where we had just purchased our house, $1 million house, $1 million plus house, which obviously was a huge accomplishment. And we'd moved to another state. I was also newly pregnant. I was 6 weeks pregnant at the time. And so we started to get into this period of like just more challenge than I could have ever dreamed of, all happening at once. And so That was when was that? 2022. So like from 2019 to 2022, I was kind of like planning this pivot and trying to figure out how to make it happen. I started to, like I said, make some big decisions. I had also taken out some business loans to try and pivot the business in a different direction and build up one side of things while the other side kind of came to a close. And it was kind of like this perfect storm. And so 2022, like the back end of 2022, was very, very challenging, especially leading up to the birth of my daughter. Ultimately, was in like a bit of a legal thing with this person, but decided to let it go because I didn't want to be in a legal battle for my entire pregnancy.
It's
So
stressful.
all this was, yeah, all this was happening. And then I gave birth to my daughter in February 2023. And literally, it was like, I believe it was like 6 weeks later, we get a knock on the door and it's American Express threatening to sue me because I couldn't pay my bill.
Oh my
And I was holding,
gosh.
yeah, I was holding my daughter, my new daughter in my hands, in my arms. And I remember in that moment feeling like, okay, this is not my finest moment. But at the same time, because of the work that I had done, like truly, there have been previous moments of despair. Like, don't get me wrong, but truly, because of the work that I've done, I was like, okay, this is going to make a really good story one day. And I was able to think like, you know what? There have been entrepreneurs and people who have come back from way, way worse, right? And I've actually learned a lot about money and debt and all of that through my own experiences. So I knew exactly what to do. I knew who to call. I knew how to handle the situation. And so I'm really grateful for that, sitting here talking to you about it. And I share this like with a lot of strength and truth in, that it was a moment where I was like upset for a second, but was able to move on because of the work that I've done. And so
Mhm.
anyone who is in a place where they feel very challenged around money and you're not able to bounce back, like, trust me, I've so been there as well. But this work is so transformational, not just when things are going really well, but in those moments. And, business is cyclical, right? There's not always going to be a high. You're going to need strength. You're going to need this mindset to persevere and to stay abundant, even when there's nothing in the bank or something like that happens or someone threatens you. Like, you're going to need this work. And so that's also why I'm so passionate about it.
Oh, I love that so much. I love that story so much, and it is such a great story, and our traumatic experiences or our setbacks are always, the teaching points for so many others. So thank you so much for being here today. You've given so much value, and so I will link all of your information below. So anyone who's listening, if you are interested in doing money work, which I'm guessing you are because this is really important work if you want to be successful. Definitely check out Emily's course. And as she mentioned, she's giving everyone who's listening here 15% off when you use the promo code below. And then if you're like, hey, maybe I want to be a money mentality coach, and I want to do this for a business, and you've been looking into something and you're like, I want to learn more, her information will be below as well so that you can reach out to her. So thank you so much again for being here and your generosity.
Yeah. And for anyone interested in the certification, definitely let me know that Deidre sent you and that you learned about this through this podcast, because we'll have some special bonuses. So, and thank you so much for having me and for giving me the opportunity to share my story. Yeah, super grateful for you.